Good morning, everybody. This is Michelle with Commercial Investigations. I have everybody muted except my colleagues who are joining me today. If you want to ask any questions, please unmute yourself. There's also the type-in chat, and we will have a Q&A session at the end. We're glad that you joined us today. This is a very interesting topic, very compliance-oriented. It's a topic that not a lot of our clients really know about or are familiar with when it comes to compliance in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We'll talk a little bit about it because it's starting to show up in the news a little bit, and we're trying to help educate people and let you understand how we process the background checks. Today is primary source verification versus simultaneous notice. My colleague, Melissa Ramsey. Melissa's an investigator. She's been with us almost 3 years now and has a bachelor's degree from Siena. She had advanced certification under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We're very proud of her for that. She's the first one to accomplish that. We have Christopher Brinkman joining us today. He's with us for a little bit over a year now. And Chris has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from SUNY Albany. Chris has basic certification under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. I'm Michelle Pyan. I'm the president. I started commercial investigations over 10 years ago. I'm a licensed private investigator in my first background check in 1991. I also have the basic Fair Credit Reporting Act certification. So we're going to talk a little bit about primary source verification and simultaneous notice. Now, Mike are going to join in later to talk about the specific law and how it reads and how it applies, and to give you a key example of how we would do it as it applies to our clientele and the different searches that we do. Talk a little bit about why a company like us would do primary source verification. Requirements under the Fair Credit Reporting Act are for us as the Consumer Reporting Agency. So as a Consumer Reporting Agency, we have a couple options, and we choose primary source verification. So why would we do that? Well, like companies, we have a vision, mission, and values. One of the values is do the right thing always. And we feel very firmly that primary source verification is the right option when it comes to the Fair Credit Reporting Act and what we choose to do. It's important to understand that background investigations are not a commodity. There are a lot of differences amongst the background screening provided out there. One major differentiator is primary source verification versus simultaneous notice. Primary source verification provides the most respectful environment for the subject of the background check. As we go through some examples, you'll understand more of what it is. Source verification also makes positive identification of your subject and the adverse information relayed, so there's no additional work on that, and there's questions whether or not it is your subject. Part of concern CRAs, a CRA is a Consumer Reporting Agency under the Fair Credit Reporting Act is Commercial Investigations LLC. As part of concern CRAs, we pledge to verify the accuracy of information provided and avoid offshoring Americans' personal information. So as investigation companies that are part of concerned CRAs, they verify the accuracy of information provided, which is primary source verification, and we also avoid offshoring of Americans' personal information. So we don't have centers in India or Bangladesh or anywhere else for information about U.S. citizens is sent overseas for other people to do employment verifications and education verifications. That's a big differentiator as well. So part of concerned CRAs is the responsible use of criminal record data. This happens when using databases, and databases are very powerful, and a lot of our searches are database searches. So when we're doing database searches, we want to make sure that we're also verifying the information from there, which is primary source verification. So prior to reporting any information to an employer, our client, yourselves, about a criminal record that comes from a database, we verify the information directly with the report jurisdiction. That's primary source verification. So this ensures that you, our client, make a decision based upon accurate and up-to-date information. We provide information about the limited nature of criminal record databases and the importance of researching each applicant's criminal history in the jurisdictions in which the applicant currently or previously has lived or worked. That's policy set up, and that's part of our primary source verification. So ultimately, we're concerned about ongoing media coverage related to and background investigations, background checks, and Chris is going to talk about one of those situations that's been in the media a lot. It's the potential for litigation and overreaching legislative solutions. So the potential for litigation is not just us, but it's also our client who relied upon the information. So it's important as a client of ours to be educated about the options that we've chosen, and we've chosen to go with primary source verification instead of simultaneous notice. And overreaching legislative solutions, we are very highly regulated, mainly with the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is implemented by the Federal Trade Commission and the Consumer Financial Fraud Protection Bureau. So we have a lot of oversight into what we do already. So not simultaneous notice. Well, understand that at this point you don't quite have an understanding of what primary source verification is and simultaneous notice is, other than what you can assume from the two terms themselves. But you're going to a little bit more in just a minute. But simultaneous notice is a very cheap way of doing background checks. We feel it's not a responsible way of handling data, especially the sensitive data that we are trusted with. Very devastating to the subject of the information, especially when there's not a positive identification, which does not happen when simultaneous notice is used. For a quick turnaround time, and that's why a lot of companies have chosen to go with the simultaneous notice, because they can keep their turn time down. It's accurate, it's not up to date. It increases the risk of litigation to the end users of the report, such as you, our clients, and there's also the potential for public relations problems by the end users of the reports. So to help better understand what I've just gone over, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who's going to talk a little bit about the laws involved in our options for primary source verification or simultaneous notice. Melissa?
Everyone, thanks for a good day. So I'm going to break down the Reporting Act. In Section 13, general, an agency issues a consumer report and employment purposes in which, for that purpose, files the report items of information on consumers which are public records and unlikely to have an adverse effect upon a consumer's ability to gain employment shall any notice. At the subject of the record, information is reported to the user of such consumer report to notify the consumer of the fact that public record information is being reported by the Consumer Reporting Agency. With the name of the person to whom such information is being reported, or which is the primary source verification, contains strict procedures designed to ensure that whenever public record information, which is likely to have an adverse effect on a consumer's ability in employment, is reported, it is complete and up to date. For purposes of this paragraph, the public record relating to arrests, indictments, convictions, suits, tax liens, and housing judgments should be considered up to date and the current public record status of the item at the time of the report is reported. Now, all you guys are thinking, what is she talking about? To understand, break it down for you. The explanation for this is this option allows for reporting of such information found in a criminal record database is not validated. It is relayed to both the user and the subject at the same time, regardless of the accuracy. process is undertaken by large data brokers and the background screening industries. An example of this is that imagine if a John Smith is being run in the National Sex Offender Registry search. Those that come back are then being relayed without further verification of other identifiers besides name and name match, and no verification on other information through primary source of the information. So we're going to go to the state or local level sex offenders registry or the county court. It's just going to get relayed to you and the subject. The client then goes through the results to either confirm or deny those actual results about their applicant. In the name of John Smith, you can only imagine those criminal results and how many you're going to have to sort through, and whether or not this person has the same last name or the same middle initial or the same date of birth. And they then still has to follow this pre-adverse adverse action notice. And you're getting those results and the subject's getting the results and you haven't looked at those results yet. The subject is on you, asking you questions, wondering what's going on about this. Some employees automatically assume that it's a subject and doesn't even look further into this information. So it could be harmful to your company as well, not just to the subject. So the one I'm going to talk about is primary source verification. That allows for the reporting of such information to the employer once the background screening company procedures to make sure that the information will be reported is complete and up to date. The breakdown of this means is the information we find is compared through subjects against all available identifiers. That includes his date of birth, their security number, their address, their weight, you name it. We use that information to roll and confirm information. The methods we find are then searched as the primary source of the data. The court that actually heard the criminal case and the sex offender registry. The example of this is if Johnson had a number of matches in the National Sex Offender Registry with a primary source verification, additional information and databases are compared to the subjects, and any matches are researched again at the primary source of the data. So we're going to go to the state and local sex offender registry and the county courts for this information. So to wrap up, I think Section 613 is in 614 of the FCRA. Whenever a consumer reporting agency, which is commercial investigations, prepares an investigative consumer report, no adverse information in the consumer report other than information which is a matter of public record may be included in a subsequent consumer report unless such adverse information has been verified in the process of making sure the consumer report or adverse information was received within. Now I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and he's going to give us an example.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Basically go through kind of the policies and features that we'll use in event. So I touched on earlier databases that we run, such as Origin, Cursory Indicator, even Protection Plus. Look up that information for any criminal records that will pass. We'll run in verifications, and those include the searches as well as with New York statewide. Make sure that we got all the most accurate and efficient possible. So we do use the primary source for reduction in mismatched names as well as other buyers in maybe wrong state residents, etc. So example is Systems was running a background check for Kevin, who was applying for a job at All Set Management. I think it looks like he's trying to be a doorman. Had found in their background check was felony and misdemeanor convictions. He had only just matched that to the same date of birth. Now Jones being a common name, definitely go through try ruling out other identifiers, maybe a middle name. Or I guess when they were doing the report, the one that came back with it wasn't even tied to the same race that Kevin Jones was. So it ended up being just basically a bus kind of mission. So like they didn't even go through all the court records to rule out any other identifiers. So to read back, that just wanted to go through primary source, just make sure that we got the most accurate information. So we report to you. It's like that. It's almost like that we're reporting the investigation. And I'm going to go over to Michelle, who should be wrapping up with the Q&A.
So you want to go back a little bit to the John Smith example. I like to use that, and I like to say, like, say a local hockey organization. Jeff's son is going to play hockey, and he wants to coach that hockey team, so he goes ahead and does his background check. Well, a lot of John Smiths that come up on National Sex Offender Registry and other crime databases that are part of, say, our origin search. Now, okay, that's doing simultaneous notice. They're going to take that report with those different John Smith's information. They'll send it to the subject, usually via email, and at the same time, they're going to release the information to the client. So local hockey association now has all this information about John Smith. And most people, especially in volunteer organizations, if they're volunteers themselves, they're not really sure how to read it. And sometimes they just assume it's the same person. And the Smith then obviously isn't going to get the opportunity to coach his hockey team, but he's also going to have all these people from the hockey association thinking that he's the sex offender or criminal as reported with the simultaneous report. So John Smith can say, what we do, we work with USA Hockey, and we do all the junior hockey. And in New York State, Smith runs that background check. We're through, and we're going to rule out those John Smiths that have a different race, different date of birth, different middle initial. And we're going to, if there's any that look like it is our John Smith, we're going to go to the prime source and do the prime source verification. So in this case, the prime source may be the state sex offender registry or jurisdiction of sex offender registries if it's like an Indian territory or other jurisdictions outside of the state sex offender databases. Or if it's a criminal record, we're going to go to that county or statewide of that record. So the prime source is where that record originated, like the court or the sex offender registry or professional license verification of a degree, say, or something like that. So in this case, John Smith would have gotten a clean report that to coach son's hockey team, and nobody would have this error about the situation thinking that John Smith is the John Smith that committed these heinous crimes. So example, and we've actually seen that happen. Name changed, obviously, but it reinforces our do the right thing always, and our choice as a company to do prime source verification. So I know this is a bit of an involved topic, and we've talked about two sides of it, and some of the law and some of the examples and reasons why we as a company choose to do this for our clients. This time I want to open it up for a Q&A session, and I want to remind you that you're muted, so please unmute yourself or type us agent in the chat section. More minutes, but just page through a couple of slides here about us and a couple other things. But if it has any questions, comments, situations, anything they want to talk about right now, please unmute yourself and share that. All right, we're always available to you. Contact information is 800-284-0906. And you are current email addresses, those of you who are clients. I have a few clients on board. If you want to talk about anything, just give us a call. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We really think that this is an important topic and are trying to educate more people so you're more aware of what happens in the background screening industry. So, signing off, and I'm proud to be your proactive truth partner. This is Melissa and Chris. Thanks, everyone.